right. Just for the record, could you say and spell your first and last name and give me where you live?
My name is Sandra Parker, and I live in Morrow, Ohio. Whoop, wait a minute.
Can you hear me?
Whoops. No, no, something popped up.
Okay, gotcha.
Oh, my dogs. Um, sorry.
I
Okay.
understand.
Do you want my address or just that I live in Morrow?
Just just that is fine.
Okay.
Walk me through what you've been dealing with the last few years. Let's start there.
Okay. Um, it's been a nightmare. Uh, I got arrested on February 18th of 2021. My husband and I both. The FBI came in force. There was probably 20 or 30 agents, a SWAT team, an armored vehicle with a battering ram in our front yard. It was the dead of winter in February. It was snow on the ground. Um, and this was 5:30 in the morning. They called us out on a bullhorn, waking the whole neighborhood. And we were, our bedroom's in the back of the house, and we were sleeping. We didn't hear it. Our daughter, who was, I think, 16 at the time, share her bedrooms at the front. She came knocking on our door, said, Mom, Dad, the FBI's out here. We're like, what? You know, and so I got dressed. My husband has health issues, so it took him longer to get dressed. So I went down first and I walked out the door, and there I was all these FBI's with guns pointed at me, red dots on my chest. And um, I I was gonna go back in and get a coat, and they said no, stay out here and leave the door open. They sent a drone into our house. My husband was sitting on the steps trying to get his shoes on, and it was surreal. I mean, never in my life, never had any trouble with the law, never been in any kind of trouble. So then the agents, two or three of, I don't know, several agents came in to the house, and they showed us that, well, they didn't show us initially a search warrant or anything, but it was a warrant, but I thought it was kind of weird because it wasn't filled in like we're looking for this or that or whatever. But what they ended up doing was like 4 pages of stuff they took out of our house, and they just listed it on that page. But they put us in shackles, belly chains, ankle shackles, whatever, took us in separate cars to be interviewed at the FBI headquarters in Kenwood. And then from there, we spoke to them. And then from there, they took us down to the marshal's office, which I guess is in the federal building or courthouse or whatever downtown. We were put in little holding cells, we're pictured, fingerprinted, and all that good stuff. And they we had to wait to see a magistrate or a judge. And so we waited in those cells, still shackled and all that good stuff. And it was by Zoom because it was during the COVID stuff. And so once she heard our case or whatever, she let us go on our own recognizance. But we didn't have any money. They didn't let us bring anything with us. We didn't even have a winter coat. We had nothing. And they took our phones and all of that. So when we were going to be released, they said, you can call someone and come and get you. And we're like, well, you brought us here. Or are you going to take us? But nope, nope, you got to find your own way or walk. So we, um, my husband, he couldn't remember anybody's phone numbers, of course, because everybody has the numbers in the phone. And he says, well, don't you remember anybody's number? And my husband's like, well, I remember my wife's. Or he asked the guy, do you remember anybody's? He says, well, I remember my wife's. And my husband's like, well, she's in the cell next to me. That's not going to help. So at any rate, we got out on our own recognizance on ankle monitors. And we had to basically be on the house arrest kind of thing for the first, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks. And then they took us off of the house or the monitors after a few weeks. And then we were on pretrial. So we had to submit the drug testing, even though we're not drug users or anything like that. We had to randomly be tested. And we couldn't talk to anybody about what was going on really. And we were assigned public defenders from DC for our case. And we would meet on Zoom and with the judge and the prosecuting attorneys. And that went on until we had our trial in it was, I guess, February. It started in February, early February of 2023. And it was a 6-week trial. And we were on trial with 4 other people we didn't even know. Um, but it was awful because you had to just basically sit there and listen to the prosecution make you out to be like you're some terrible person who's done something terribly wrong. And my husband didn't even go into the Capitol. I went in to help. I was a scuba medic, and so I had medical experience, and I was with a woman who we found out close to the time that we went to DC that she was an oath keeper, but she had been a medic in the Army. So she had given me a vest with medical supplies. She had one. So we went in to help. We helped people. We left, help people get out. And that was the end of that. And I didn't really think they let us in. The officers didn't say, no, you can't come in here. We didn't hurt anybody. I didn't do any damage. I didn't do anything except help people. And then, when I walked into the Capitol, standing off to the left were probably 20 or 30 police in hard shell riot gear. If they had wanted to stop people from going to the Capitol, they could have done that. But for whatever reason, they were just kind of standing back there behind a bicycle rack. So it was just a really weird, bizarre thing. But then didn't think we'd done anything really wrong. And so then the FBI shows up. So our trial lasted 6 weeks, and it was a jury trial, and we had to go to DC. We had our daughter at home. So we would go, she was old enough by that point. We would go to DC for the week, drive there, and then drive back on Friday night, and then do this for 6 weeks. And in the end, we were found, I was found guilty of everything I was charged with, which was 5 felonies and a misdemeanor. And my husband had been charged with, I think, maybe, I'm not sure whether it was 2 felonies and 2 misdemeanors, but he was only found guilty of 2 things, a felony and a misdemeanor. And then we went for sentencing in September back in DC. And basically, even at our sentencing thing, the prosecution, I can remember the prosecutor saying about me, she had this, distinguished career, and all of a sudden she became radicalized, and she's a domestic terrorist, and she's a danger to society. She should be locked up. And, thinking to myself, wow, this is just insane. But the judge realized we had people write letters for us, and the judge was very good and very fair, I felt. And he sentenced me to a year of house arrest and 250 hours of community service. And I had to pay $1,000 restitution, I think $575 of court costs. And then my husband was sentenced to 6 months house arrest and $250 court costs and $1,000 restitution. And the judge said that we could pay our restitution $50 a month, which was helpful. So we've been doing that. And when I was on house arrest for a year, I actually got off after about 10 and a half months for good behavior, basically. But we couldn't go out anywhere. The only places we could go is if we had doctor's appointments, to the grocery, bank, essential pharmacy stuff like that. And it was very difficult, to not to basically have our lives on hold like that. And my husband has had a lot of health problems, and I think the stress of all of it has worsened his conditions. And so it's been a horrible toll. I can't begin to tell you. Um, but our faith in God is what really got us through. Um, I always knew that at some point God would deliver us from this, and he did. And I think he used Donald Trump for that. And I praise him and thank him, because without that faith, um, I don't know if we would have been able to mentally endure. But one good thing did come out of it. So I had to do 250 hours of community service. So I had a hard time finding a place to do it because I had felonies. And a lot of volunteer places said, no, you can't volunteer with felonies. And so I have been volunteering at Little Miami Food Pantry out here in Morrow, and I love it. And even after I was done with my 250 hours, I continue to volunteer there on Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays. Oh, and there's one other thing, about the jury, our jury. It was interesting. One of the members of our jury had been employed by CNN and C-SPAN for 30 plus years. And she did an interview 2 days after our trial was over with C-SPAN. And she basically talked about the whole trial and all of that. And I can send you the link if you would like to listen to it, because it's quite enlightening about what went on behind the scenes. But from her own words, she basically um, convinced there were 4 people on our jury that did not want to find us guilty. But she kept going and at them. And there was an attorney, and I think he actually worked for the DOJ, this attorney, and the two of them convinced these 4 holdouts. I think they just got tired because it was a 6 day deliberation. And they kept holding out, holding out, and holding out. And I guess they figured, well, this is never going to end. So we're just going to go ahead and say, okay, they're guilty, whatever. So that really was, I think, telling about, kind of the unfairness, you know, of 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 that jury situation. It was hard. I started listening to that when my attorney sent it to me, the link, and I couldn't listen to it. It was so upsetting to me to hear it. It took me 6 months before I could listen to that interview. And I thought, but again, my faith in God, I knew that no matter what, we'd be okay. So, and here we are today celebrating. So,
Got you. Got you. A couple of quick follow-up questions. You mentioned you were entering the Capitol to help people, provide
yes.
people aid. And it appears in pictures and everything that we've seen, you're in some type of camouflage.
Yes,
Explain.
yes. Okay, so when we were going to Washington, we were elderly. We didn't want to go by ourselves. We tried to get family friends, somebody that would go with us, and nobody was going to go. And so we had gone to a rally up in Columbus right after the election, and just your typical rally. Well, there were a couple people there, Jessica Watkins and Donovan Crow, and they were there as peacekeepers and to provide medical as needed. And they were standing right there with the officers that were kind of making sure everything stayed cool with the protest. And so my husband was talking to them, and he exchanged numbers with Jessica. And so when we couldn't find anybody to go with us, they said, he called Jessica and said, "Are you guys going to go?" And she said, yes. In fact, they had been to a rally in DC in, I think, December or something before that. And they said, "You're right to be wary because Antifa had been known to harass, especially elderly or more vulnerable people, and throw like water bottles and stuff like that at them." And so we decided to go with them. So we found out close to when we were going to go that Jessica was actually a member of the Oath Keepers. And I had never heard of the Oath Keepers before. So I went online, I looked them up. So the Oath Keepers are people that served in the military, law enforcement, EMS, and fire. So I thought, oh, okay, these are the good guys, right? So we went with Jessica, and we went a day early to help with the Oath Keepers were providing security for some speaking events, Freedom Plaza the day before. They were actually providing security and escorting VIPs the day of the rally. We didn't do that part because we weren't oath keepers. We just kind of watched the speeches and things at the rally. And then after that was over, the Donald Trump was done speaking. The Oath Keepers got their belongings and started heading to the Capitol. And we were told that they were going to be doing security for some speeches on the Capitol grounds. So, and our attorneys showed that yes, in fact, there were a number of speeches scheduled for the Capitol grounds. So that's why we walked to the Capitol. Like I said, Jessica gave us helmets to wear because, and a vest. She gave me a vest with medical supplies in it. And she knew I had experience, as a scuba medic. And so she said the helmets they're not great, but they'll protect you if somebody throws a brick at your head or throws a water bottle, which Antifa had been known to do. So when we got to the Capitol, it was chaos. And so I don't know. I thought somebody said there might have been an Oath Keeper that was in the Capitol and they wanted to go in and get him out, or they were going to go in and help, whatever. I just followed them because I knew that I could help. I had medical training and stuff. So followed them, and so then we went into the Capitol and did that. I can't hear you. Can you?
I was muted, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Understood. My other question for you is now that you are pardoned, um, your reaction to that, when did you hear about the news? It was a campaign promise of President Trump's, and it's now a reality for you and 1,500 other people. How does that feel?
It was amazing. It was weird because we had been watching the inauguration and all the events and stuff. And I saw on TV that he had signed this pardon of these 1,500 people, but I didn't know if I was one of those 1,500. I really didn't know. And so it was funny. We went up to bed. We were tired. We went to bed early. And we're still watching the stuff on TV. And I saw a person, a J6 person, say that their attorney had called them to give him the news. And so I was like, we had gone to bed early. Nobody had called before we went to bed, but I thought, oh, maybe I should go down and check the phones because they were downstairs. So I go down and check the phones. And sure enough, my attorney had called. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute here. So I run upstairs, I wake up my husband, and he said, yes, you are one of the 1,500. You guys are pardoned, a full unconditional pardon. And I mean, I think my heart probably stopped for a few beats. I was just, it was surreal. I just have lived under this cloud for so long, and all of a sudden it's lifted, and I can't, you just don't even know how to feel or what to think. I mean, I think I let out a yell and ran and told my daughter, and my dogs are barking and everything's crazy. And it was kind of like, oh my gosh. And then Ben heard from his attorney who said the same thing and sent us something from the whitehouse.gov site. And so it was surreal. It really was. Um,
Definitely, definitely.
yeah.
Final question for you is over the last 3 or 4 years, people see the images that come from January 6th, the violence,
Yes.
and property being damaged and everything, and property being taken or attempting to be taken from the Capitol. And they don't necessarily see it, in a sense of it's just innocent people walking in to help because they have medic experience. What do you say to that?
Well, I would never condone damaging property, taking property, anything like that. I will tell you from where we went in, I did not see that violence. I think more of that was on the west side, and I went in through the east side. While we were in, Jessica and we were in the rotunda. We saw somebody try to damage stuff, and we ran over and said, "Stop! What are you doing?" And chased this person away. Um, so I would never, for any reason, think that people should take things, damage things, hurt people, do anything like that. That upset me as well. I'm not, I, you know, I'm a law-abiding person. I never, until this, um, yeah, that bothered me too, and I can understand why anybody would be bothered by that. That's not the way things should be. So,
Definitely. Is there anything else I didn't ask or say that you would like to say about your case and the last few years?
um, I think that um, the country has been so divided by all of this, and I think that the events of January 6th were dividing. That it was a bad time, and it was, after I was back in my hotel room and on the day of January 6th and saw some of the things that were going on in other places that I didn't witness with my own eyes. My heart sank. I, you know, it was a very dividing thing. I hope that um, now that, people are pardoned, I think a lot of people were basically innocent. I mean, at most trespassing on Capitol grounds. I think that um, I'm hoping that people can kind of get past that and not hold that. I mean, I've lost friends and family over this. And, it breaks my heart. But yeah, I'm just hoping that we can kind of come back together and realize that. there's two sides to things. Not everybody that went to the Capitol that day was bad or went for nefarious purposes. There were probably some bad actors and some instigators and whatnot, but not everybody. A lot of people, and the what people like me and other people that really didn't do anything, to hurt anybody or damage anything. What we had been put through with the raids, the FBI raids, the money that we've had to pay out, the civil suits, all of that, I think is unprecedented in that other Capitol protests that they have not done this to other people. The Seattle riots, the Minneapolis, those people, the inaugural riots when on Trump's first term, those people, only a few were arrested, and the ones that were, their charges were dismissed. So I think, you know, look at more than just the one side of it, that there were some wrongs on both sides, but definitely I think the persecution of January 6th people like me, and I can only speak to me and my husband, but I think what they did to us was totally beyond, you know, the pale for what should have happened, in a just society. So,
Definitely, definitely. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me, share your side. Again, I know it was last minute that we reached out to you, but I thank you again for taking the time to speak with me.
no, I appreciate you reaching out, and I'm glad to have an opportunity to be able to talk. I wasn't able to talk for so long, so
Definitely, definitely. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.
all right, you too. Thank you.